The main question is, will President Obama order an attack on Syria despite the UN calls to hold fire, to wait for the results of the UN investigation, and as the UN Secretary General said, to give peace a chance? We hear the drums of war loud and clear in Washington. We know that the U.S. has aligned its warships along the Syrian coast, preparing for a possible attack. And yet, President Obama, when he sat down for an interview, said, "I have not yet made the decision." From what he went on to say, one should not assume that there will be no strikes. Take a listen.
We can take limited, tailored approaches, not getting drawn into a long conflict. We send a shot across the bow saying, stop doing this. That can have a positive impact on our national security over the long term, and may have a positive impact in the sense that chemical weapons are not used, again, on innocent civilians.
Of course, it begs the question, what's a tailored approach in an environment of a violent civil war where you have sides blaming each other for horrible crimes that have been and are being committed in Syria? UN inspectors are in the country now investigating the attack that happened a week ago. The US, the UK, and France have basically brushed off in advance any results that investigation could bring. They basically discredited the UN fact-finding mission and said they know best what happened. Here's what President Obama said about the evidence that they have.
We do not believe that, given the delivery systems using rockets, that the opposition could have carried out these attacks. We have concluded that the Syrian government, in fact, carried these out. And if that's so, then there need to be international consequences.
Important to note, the UN investigation will not determine who used chemical weapons, only whether they were used. Syria says it wants the UN to also investigate who carried out the attacks, not just whether they were carried out. This Wednesday, the Syrian ambassador to the UN said Syria had also requested a UN investigation into, quote, 3 more locations where the Syrian soldiers inhaled the nerve gas last week on the outskirts of Damascus. And previously, Damascus also requested an investigation into the March attacks in Khan al-Assal, where chemical weapons were used, with evidence indicating that they were used by the rebels. But the U.S. and its allies have shunned that evidence and generally ignored those attacks. Russia and China are opposed to any UN Security Council resolution without seeing the results of the UN investigation. The U.S., the UK, and France have indicated that they're ready to strike without a UN mandate. The Russian president said he's opposed to any military intervention in Syria, that only a diplomatic solution can stop the bloodshed. President Putin also condemned any use of chemical weapons by whoever it may be. We also heard the Russian foreign minister say the fallout from the alleged chemical attack last week is aimed at undermining peace talks in Geneva, where the two sides of the Syrian conflict were supposed to sit down and map out a deal. And that meeting was something that Russia very much wanted to happen. It seems at this point, calls to investigate and calls to give diplomacy a chance are falling on deaf ears.